al-Assad meets the parents of martyred pupils and stresses that Syria's main battle is against ignorance and our people will remain strong and steadfast. Russia hopes that the UN Secretary General would respond quickly to Syria's request of forming an independent team to investigate into Aleppo's crime committed by terrorists. Units of our army inflict heavy losses on terrorists in Damascus countryside and elsewhere. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and happy Mother's Day. On the occasion of the Teacher's Day, President Bashar al-Assad meets with the parents of pupils who were martyred due to terrorist acts at the Education Center for Plastic Arts in At-Tijara neighborhood in Damascus.
On the anniversary of the Teacher's Day, President Bashar al-Assad surprised the parents of the students who were killed because of the terrorist attacks while studying on school chairs, as the Ministry of Education was honoring them at the Educational Center for Plastic Arts in Al-Tijara area in Damascus. President Assad said that despite the fact that this day is a teacher's day, not a student's one, but the student and teacher are part of education, and thus the occasion is one which is for knowledge. President Assad said he wanted to meet the parents to take strength from them, despite the pain resulting from their loss. The president added that all Syria is currently wounded, as there is no one who did not lose a relative or a family member. However, al-Assad added, this should not make us weak, because the battle is a battle of will and steadfastness, affirming that as much as we are strong, we would be capable of protecting Syrians. Prior to concluding his visit, the president listened to the families' requests and their suffering that resulted from losing their sons. The president gave his directives to the Ministry of Education to work on alleviating their suffering and achieving the demands of the parents. Afterwards, President and Mrs. al-Assad met the families of the teachers who lost their lives in schoolrooms. The president said targeting school teachers by terrorists and their martyrdom affirm that the Syrians' battle in the first place is against ignorance, as those teachers lost their lives while spreading knowledge and culture. He pointed out that our message to Syria's enemies would be by staying on the path of those teachers and achieving their goals, which is that Syria remains strong and steadfast.
The Russian Foreign Ministry has said Russia is ready to send experts to take part in the investigation committee to be formed on using chemical weapons in Syria in case such committee is formed. Earlier, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Gennady Gatilov announced that Russia hopes that the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon would respond quickly to Syria's request in holding an investigation into using chemical weapons by terrorist groups in Aleppo countryside. Gatilov stressed that it is necessary to form a neutral and professional team of experts to achieve objective outcomes. On March 19th, the armed terrorist groups fired a rocket containing chemical materials on Khan al-Asal in Aleppo countryside, killing and injuring scores of civilians. Russia's UN ambassador, president of the UN Security Council for March, Vitaly Churkin, reiterated his country's call for holding a neutral, thorough and objective investigation into the terrorists' use of chemical weapons in Syria. Churkin stressed that the international community has experts from several countries, including Russia, adding that the UN Secretary General will form a team encompassing highly experienced members. UN spokesman Martin Nesirki said that the UN has received a written request from Syria's permanent envoy to the UN, Bashar al-Ja'fari, to hold an investigation. Russia's permanent representative to the EU, Vladimir Chizhov, has warned that repeating the Libyan scenario by NATO in Syria would be a grave strategic mistake. Chizhov said it would be also a mistake to agree to France's and Britain's suggestion to lift the embargo imposed by the EU on supplying the opposition with arms. The Foreign and Expatriates Ministry has said that the Syrian government had requested the UN Secretary General to form a specialized, independent and neutral technical mission to investigate the terrorists' use of chemical weapons in Khan al-Assal in Aleppo. The ministry pointed out that this request confirmed Syria's keenness on uncovering the details of this crime and the threats it poses on the safety of Syrian citizens and refuting all the allegations made by pro-terrorism circles. On December 8, 2012, Syria had notified the UN Secretary General of its worries that some countries that support terrorism would provide chemical weapons to terrorist groups who would use them and blame the Syrian government for doing so. In the wake of the crime committed by the terrorist groups in Khan al-Assal, the Syrian government had addressed a message to the UN Secretary General that included details of the crime and called on the world community to take deterrent measures against the armed groups and their supporters. Syria's permanent representative to the UN in New York, Dr. Bashar al-Jafari, said Syria has requested the formation of an international committee to investigate terrorist use of chemical weapons in Aleppo suburbs. Al-Jafari stressed that Britain's and France's decision to arm the terrorist groups aims at foiling the peaceful solution and the Russian-American dialogue on the crisis in Syria. He added that the main objective of the terrorists' use of chemical weapons is to try to end any international efforts to find a political solution based on the Geneva document. Al-Jafari said the use of the terrorist groups of all kinds of criminal methods proves they are ready to use any sort of weapons in order to realize their terrorist objectives and serve the interests of those who support them. The Syrian students studying in Slovakia condemned the crime of using chemical weapons by the terrorists in Aleppo. The Slovakia student branch pointed out in a statement that the armed terrorist groups, supported by some regional countries, have transcended all norms and human ethics by using internationally prohibited weapons against Syrian people. The statement stressed that Syrian students studying abroad have full confidence in the capacity of Syrian people and army to foil the bloody international conspiracy against the country. The Syrian community and students studying in the Czech Republic have condemned the terrorist attack with chemical weapons on Khan al-Assal in Aleppo suburbs. They denounced it as another proof of the hatred those terrorist groups harbor against the citizens of the homeland and the hypocrisy of the West that supports them and claims at the same time to be keen on international security and peace. This dangerous escalation, the statement added, indicates the bankruptcy of those groups in light of the strikes dealt to them by the heroes of the Syrian Arab Army. The Syrian Arab Army's operations continue in Jobar in Damascus suburbs. Groups of mercenary terrorists infiltrated into the area, taking advantage of its architectural nature in order to launch the attacks against citizens and the military personnel, particularly during the night. The army units advanced in Jobar neighborhood, which was secured to prevent the terrorists from entering the secured quarters in Damascus. An official source said that an army unit has clashed with a terrorist group near the Grand Mosque in Jobar, killing or wounding its members, including its leader, Brahim Aboud. In Damascus suburbs, the army inflicted heavy losses on terrorists in a series of operations in Douma and the surrounding farms. The army destroyed several vehicles used by the terrorists in their attacks on citizens and their properties. The army also clashed with the terrorist group at Dawar al-Thanawiya in Harasta, killing or wounding its members and confiscating their weapons that included machine guns and war rifles. Our armed forces have inflicted heavy losses on the armed terrorist groups in Al-Utayba village in Harran al-Awamid and its surroundings in eastern Ghouta in Damascus suburbs, destroying their hideouts and killing and wounding a large number of them. An army unit has killed 9 terrorists at Ad-Daghmashiyya bridge at Al-Utayba entrance. Another army unit eliminated all the members of a terrorist group in the center of the village and arrested several armed men. A terrorist hideout was also destroyed. During the operation, the main road to smuggle weapons and terrorists from Jordan and Lebanon was discovered. Among the smuggled weapons seized were heavy machine guns, RPG shells, ammunition, anti-armor bases, Dushka machine guns, equipped vehicles, and anti-aircraft artillery. Competent authorities captured today members of an armed terrorist group who were planting explosive devices along Homs-Palmyra highway. Sana correspondent quoted a source in the governorate that army engineering units dismantled 10 explosive devices, each weighing 25 kilograms, planted by terrorists in Al-Bayarat area in Homs. In Hamas' southern countryside, in the area of Rur-Sus, an army unit clashed with an armed terrorist group which was trying to smuggle huge amounts of weapons coming from the Lebanese harbor of Tripoli. Our heroic army was able to eliminate large numbers of terrorists and wounding many others, in addition to confiscating a truck loaded with different kinds of weapons and ammunition, which included Cobra anti-craft missiles, anti-armored missiles, huge numbers of mortar shells, RPG launchers and a Dushka machine gun, among other sophisticated military equipment. Lebanese citizens living near the border areas refuted the news that some satellite TV stations are broadcasting regarding the Syrian air bombings inside the Lebanese borders. They affirm that there are many areas near the borders where the armed terrorist groups organize training centers for militants to smuggle them into Syria, and this poses a threat to the residents in the area. The people of the Lebanese border regions also denied any Syrian airstrikes in the areas, referring to many groups of militants in Arsal, adding that this has become a real threat to the residents of border areas, demanding the Lebanese government take the necessary measures to expel the armed groups stationed there, including the Nusra Front gunmen. With this, we end our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more news about Syria and the region, and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Now to latest business and market news with Khalid Saqabani after a short break.